One of the questions that I am often asked is, how did you get started in consulting? It never fails when I meet teachers, when I meet administrators, anyone in the field of education, they will often ask me, how did you get started? What did you do? What were the steps you took? And so in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about how I left the school system and how I am now the owner and founder of a multiple six-figure, nearly seven-figure ed consulting company, and what I had to do, how I got here, and what I also had to give up in this next episode of Educators Moving On. Welcome back to another episode of Educators Moving On. This is the podcast that will help you to live the life of your dreams unapologetically. Today, we're going to talk about my journey of transforming transforming from the school and using those skills to create my ed consulting business. It's going to get a little personal because this is my own story of transitioning. And as you all know, I was in the school system for over 17 years and I left, created my own consulting business. And now I'm a thriving consultant and business owner. And so I'm going to share that story with you today. So many of you have asked, how did you start? How did you get started? Well, it wasn't an overnight leap. It was not an overnight leap. And I am not an overnight success. It was a rather carefully planned journey that began while I was actually still in the school system. So I was still in the school system, and I'm going to walk you through those steps as well as the realizations, because you can know the steps or the tasks to do, but if you don't work to become the person, it will not happen. And that's why we have so many people who will, get the education, but will not do the implementation. So I'm going to talk to you about what led me to where I am today. So it started with a hard truth. It was a truth that I did not want to admit, that I did not want to realize, that I did not want to breath out loud because of how people would look at me, what people would say, what my family would think. And quite frankly, I thought I was being a bit ungrateful. And the truth was, I was miserable. I was miserable. So everyone said I should have been happy. I went to school. I got the good education. I got the degree. I got the job. I moved up the totem pole. I wanted to be a teacher. I became a teacher, did that successfully, became an instructional facilitator, became an assistant principal, became a principal. You know, if you want to become an assistant superintendent, the door is open for you. What are you complaining about? You're making six figures. What is the problem, Chanel? Well, the problem was I wasn't in charge of my day. I had to be at school at 7 a.m. and most days I didn't make it home to 6 p.m. I knew what time I needed to be on the road in order to make it to school on time. I also knew what time I needed to leave, what emails needed to be sent, what weekends I had to work at the school. Anything that happened, the school was in charge of my time. And so I lacked time freedom. Even though I had a family, I had boys at home. I had three boys, three sons. I had a husband. I had a mom. I had sisters, and a lot of stuff I turned down because they knew I had to work. As a matter of fact, a lot of stuff they didn't even ask me about because they knew I was going to be at work. And so they would be doing things and I'd say things like, well, why didn't you tell me? And they'd be like, you were going to be at work. We already knew you had to work. So I didn't have control of my time. So I had no time freedom. And then I could not even do the things that I wanted to do in the school system because the school system is a status quo. We do what we've been doing because that's the way we've always done it. And that just didn't work for me. To have students who need one thing and you're going to give them something else, it's the equivalent of somebody needing shoes and you saying, oh, here, the socks will work. No, they asked for shoes, give them shoes. And so there was always this fight that I was always in, trying to get the kids what they needed, trying to get the teachers what they needed, trying to support the community. And there was no real reason as to why we couldn't do the things that truly needed to be done because simply This is the way we've always done it. So we're just going to keep doing it this way because it's simple and easy. And then lastly, even though I was spending a great amount of my time at the school system, even though I was totally absorbed with the school system and it dictated everything in my life, I still wasn't financially capable of doing the things I wanted to do. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, Mary, and Jane, Timothy, Pete, and Jake were all in line to get the dollars that was owed. Not to mention, you still owe student loans. You still got your bills to pay. You still got to have a car to get back and forth to work. And I know people holler that stuff about just pay for a car in full. When you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, you're just trying to make it work. And you know what? I was tired of trying to make it work. But what I didn't want to say was that I was tired of trying to make it work, because if I said it out loud, that meant I was going to have to do something about it. So guess what I did? I kept walking around with a smile on my face and pretending to be happy and convincing myself that I was happy until one day, my son said to me, you know what? One of my friends asked me, you know what he said to me, Mom? I was like, what? He asked me if my mama was dead. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was a joke. I've done everything that I can to try to provide you a great life, to try to get you the things that you need and to be the person that you need me to be. And your friends literally think I'm dead. And I was like, why do they think I'm dead? And it was like, because Dad always comes to the games. Dad is the one who always shows up. They've only ever seen Dad. They don't see you. Now, keep in mind, I go to parent teacher conferences and I do the things that are at school, like the little in school things, but the things that are after school, going with the kids, picking up kids, and all those types of things, I didn't do. So that question nearly tore me apart. And that was the catalyst for how I knew I needed to stop and do something different. Because who is it that really wants their child to think, or their child's friends to think that they're dead? So that was the realization that I needed to walk away, that I needed to do something different. So that was the hard truth that came, that entered into my sphere, that I had to really do something about it. So what was the first practical step? The first practical step was that I needed to create a list. I had to figure out what it was that I wanted in order for me to figure out what it was that I didn't want. And it was hard for me to figure out what it was that I wanted, because guess what? I didn't know what I wanted. I had no idea what it was I truly wanted. Nobody had ever said I could have what I want. I only did what I was told to do, and I got what you get when you do what you're told to do. So I had no idea what I really wanted. So I had to write down a list of what I didn't want. What did I not want? I didn't want to be controlled by the school. I didn't want my days to be filled. I didn't want to just keep looking forward to Friday so I can live my real life on Saturday and Sunday. I didn't want the Sunday grieving session where I got to grieve the fact that I got to go back to work on Monday. I didn't want to keep robbing Peter to pay Paul, Mary Jane, Timothy, Jake, and all of them. I wanted financial freedom. So I literally made a list of what I didn't want anymore. I don't want these things anymore. I want to be able to make a true impact. I want to be able to serve leaders and teachers the way that they need to be served. So I made this list of all the things that I knew that I truly wanted. And then, the things that I didn't want. And then on the opposite side of that, I then put what the opposite of that would be. So I didn't want them to control my time. On the opposite side, that meant I want time freedom. And then I described what that was like. I want to go to bed and wake up when I want to. I want to take off when I want to. I want to dictate my own schedule. I want to be able to take vacations when I want vacations. I want to be able to do the things I want to do. So I had to literally make the list of what I did not want, what I currently have that I don't want. And I had to take that list and then generate a list of what it was I wanted, because I truly did not know what it was I wanted. So that may be helpful to someone else. So this simple exercise made it glaringly obvious that the life that I yearned for, it couldn't be found within the confines of the school system. And so that right there said to me, I can't just go to be an assistant superintendent. I can't just go to be a superintendent. I can't go and become the curriculum coordinator. I can't just take a role over in central office and keep going up the steps of the school system, because it's not going to give me the things that I want on this list. So that said to me, you got to find another way to use your skills to get the things that you want on your list. Well, lo and behold, I was the principal. So I was signing invoices for people coming in to train. And I began to start asking them questions. How did you begin your consulting business? What experience do you have? How many years have you been doing this? And as they were giving me the answers, I was like, I got just as much experience as they do. I have more experience. I know how to get things done. I know what this is like. Some of these folks had been in the school system for 20, 30 years. One of the things that I noticed was there were a lot of retired teachers who were consultants, who had been consultants for 10, 15 years, but the stuff they were teaching was very outdated. It didn't relate to the students who were currently in the classroom. And I was like, wow, there is a definite gap in the system, because we need people who have been in the system recently to be able to support, and not people. One lady, this was in 2016, she had not been in the school system since 1999. Like, what are you going to talk to us about when back then you really didn't have kids cursing you out, clowning, throwing stuff? You had a few behaviors, but not like it's a totally different ball game, if we can be honest. Even the things that are acceptable, the rules that are out here, like she didn't have to deal with trying to figure out someone's pronoun or messing up that pronoun and the consequences that could come with that. It's a lot that we have to figure out in these days in the school system that they just didn't have to figure out back then, because back then it was the teacher is the one who has the answers. We listen to the teacher. We do what the teacher says. Now, this isn't 100% for every school, but for the large majority, even for your parents, for those of us who were in school in 1999, 1998, 1992, if they called home, you got in trouble. If they called home, it was problematic. The teacher was always right, and the parents were in support of the teachers. That is not what was happening in 2016, and it is definitely not what is happening in 2023. So once I came to that realization that there was a gap in the school, in the training for teachers, I said, oh, I see my point. I see my way here. So I had to take into consideration that I would be leaving a career of nearly 20 years, and that is not an easy thing to do. So I am telling you right up front, it's not easy to do. You're going to have to grieve the loss of your position, of your role, of how it is you show up and what it is that you do. So I had to shift my mindset from being a teacher to embracing the identity of a CEO and a business owner. And so this meant learning new skills. I had to have a new understanding. And that new understanding is that income doesn't always equate to a traditional job. There was a huge misunderstanding that I had. I believe that income and job were synonymous. In order to get an income, you needed a job, and that's not true. You can get income by using your expertise. And so once I was able to move through that mindset issue, then I was able to see how I could create my own income without locking myself into a job or giving myself over to a job, because I'll never be a W-2 employee again. So now that I have been in this world, I know how to make money. I know how to make income. But back then, how did I get started? I had to do some mindset training. I had to do some shifts. And so then I started selling my expertise little by little, and we now call it consulting. And so as a consultant, I sell my expertise, and then I had to formalize it by getting the business set up, getting your EIN number, getting your business name, your operating agreement, your business banking account. Those are all tasks that you do. And those tasks can be done within a day or two, and you can have a business set up within a day or two, but it takes much longer to understand that you're a business owner and to operate as a CEO. And so letting go of my identity as a teacher And then embracing my new role as a CEO, that took some training, that took some mentorship. I had to become a mentee to other CEOs and business owners because although I had been the boss of my classroom, I had never been the boss of a business. I had never been the boss of myself. Can we be honest? I went to school when they told me to go to school. I was off when they told me to be off. So I had to become the boss of myself. And the journey wasn't just about leaving a job, it was about transforming my entire life. So I didn't want to create a business that dictated my life. I wanted my life and my business to work together collaboratively. And so I built my business around my life and not my life around my business. And so that's what I call living my dream life, being able to do the things that I love to do, when I love to do them, how I love to do them, and still be able to use my expertise, give and support, and to do all the things that I've always wanted to do, and truly be amazed by the life that I'm living and how I pour into people and how people pour into me. But it took me going through those steps. And once I figured out that it was more about becoming than about the task. A lot of times we focus so much on doing the task. That's why so many teachers with businesses that are not making money, because you have not adapted the idea that you're a CEO, a business owner, which is not the same as being a teacher. Those are two different identities. Those are two different types of energy. And so once I learned that and figured that out, and I didn't even have to figure it out, I had mentors who told me that. And once I stopped trying to intellectualize everything, see, I knew I was smart, but I figured because I'm smart, I can make it work. Business is not about how smart you are. It's not about how smart you are. And so all of the smart people, that's why a lot of them fail. And that's why a lot of the smart people work for the average people, because you got to be willing to let go of who you are and who you've been in order to become something new. And so that's how I started my consulting business. I basically got fed up. I owned the fact that I was miserable instead of continuing to pretend and worrying about what other people were going to say about me. I created a list, and on that list, it clarified for me and put it into glaring terms that this school system, I can stay until retirement, which was 12 more years, but I couldn't imagine living 12 more years like that. I already knew I was going to blow up on somebody. I was going to, do something that was going to get me fired or get me on the news some type of way. And so I said, let me figure out something else, because I don't have to sit in misery. This is my life, and I can determine when it's time to go and when it's time to stay. And if we stop and think about when we stayed too long, when we stayed in relationships too long, when we stayed in homes and locations too long, it never ends good. And so when I thought about that, I said, this is no different. This is my job. And I've extended my stay, and now it's time to go. It's time to leave. And so I formulated my plan. I actually started my business the year that I plan to leave. And I recommend that for everybody. Don't just hop up and leave your job. That's not what I'm saying. So I incorporated my business in September, and that May I resigned and did not come back. And I have not been back since. And I am headed into year number 7. Year number 7. And I've made more money than I could ever have imagined. I would never be able to live like this in the school system. I have total time freedom. I get to determine when I'll work, who I'll work with, what I charge, how long my sessions are. Total freedom. I also get creative freedom. I get to bring all types of things that are outside of the status quo back into the school system. I get to impact change at a much higher level and at a quicker rate. I have actually more influence as a consultant than I did even in the school system as a building leader. And so my life has completely changed. The relationship with my children, the relationship with my husband, how I think, how I operate, what I believe, all of that has changed because I was willing to let go of who I was to become who I needed to be. And that's what I suggest to you as well. So for those of you who are looking to change your life, I'm going to suggest you head on over to YouTube. and check out the Ultimate Vision Planning Session for 2024. It's absolutely free. There's a free workbook companion guide that goes with it. And then there's an additional workbook that you can purchase. But even if you don't purchase the workbook, there's a free one that goes with the session. It's on YouTube. Take a couple of hours to plan out your life so that you can have the most amazing 2024 ever. That's my recommendation for you. And I will see you next week on the next episode of Educators Moving On.